Chapter 1. The Promise I Made Before I Knew Her. Long before I ever met Becky, I made myself a promise. My father was a Navy man, a career military man. The government sent him all over the United States on missions we children were never to know about. And times were different back then. And when things didn't go his way, he didn't talk about it, he drank. And he had goals, ambitions, achievements. He was reaching for something out past the horizon. I doubt that my two siblings and I were ever part of those plans. My mother, faithful and gentle, simply followed him wherever the Navy sent him. We lived in small tin houses on bases. More than once, one of us kids had to walk down to the officers' club in the dark and bring our father home, because he was too far gone to make it back on his own. You'd take his arm, you'd point him at the door, and that was life for us. We didn't think it was a story. We thought it was just the weather we'd been born into. Eventually, the Navy stationed him at Great Lakes Naval Base in North Chicago, and that's where we ended up, and that's where everything changed. My father suffered a massive heart attack and nearly died. I sat by his bedside, and I shared the gospel with him there, a son leaning over his father, saying the only words I had that I knew were worth anything. Whether he accepted Christ, I don't know. I'll never know. Not on this side. I suppose I'll find out someday. My mother eventually went into assisted living. The military took care of her, and she came to know Jesus later on in her life. And I had always been grateful for that. The way you'd be grateful for a light that comes on near the end of the long, dark hall. She was a precious soul, gentle, kind, far stronger than she had ever realized she was. We would have moved her out to Nantucket with us, but her health failed so fast that travel became impossible, and we didn't want to risk hurting her any more than she had already had been. I loved her deeply. I love her still. That was the house I made my promise. After watching my mother endure it, I swore that I would never treat my wife that way. Whoever she turned out to be, wherever I found her, I would honor her, even when we didn't see eye to eye, even when I was tired or wrong or both. I made that vow to a woman I had not yet met, in a marriage that didn't yet exist. By the grace of God, I kept it. Felt the Lord call me into ministry, so I enrolled in the local Bible college in the Chicago area. That's where I met Becky. She was a beautiful young woman with a heart that wanted nothing more than to serve the Lord. Yet she grew frustrated with the status quo, with the polished formulas and rehearsed methods we were taught for reaching people. There was a stubbornness in her, but it was the kind that made you love her more. She wanted to serve Christ unconditionally, without apology, without theatrics, without the drama, and that sometimes passes for ministry. She wanted the real thing. We connected almost immediately. I spent many nights talking with her, learning her story, one gentle conversation at a time. Her background was nothing like mine. She grew up in a stable home with a mother and father who loved Jesus, surrounded by siblings who served the worship and ministry except for one. I came from the opposite side of town, the other side of the tracks, so to speak. A world of dysfunction and uncertainty, where each day carried its own kind of storm. We moved constantly, and all I ever wanted to find was one place to settle, one place to call home. I knew that when I married, that was my longing, that it would become a promise. One day an announcement came from the Bible college. A small church in Nantucket, Maine, had lost their pastor unexpectedly and was searching for someone to step in. I had to look on the map to see where Maine even was. We had lived everywhere growing up, but never there. Still, something in my call stirred me. Becky and I were falling in love, and I knew I wanted to marry her. At the same time, I felt the pull of a church, a congregation grieving and waiting and hoping for someone to shepherd them. Not long after graduation, Becky and I were married. We went out together for the interview at the church. I believe deeply that if I were going to be a pastor, my wife should have as much voice and input as I did. I didn't want to make such a life-shaping decision alone. Scripture says that two become one, and I wanted to honor that for the very beginning. So I sat in that interview side by side, presenting ourselves not as two separate people, but as a team. A week or two went by, and the phone rang, and one of the board members told us that we were hired and asked when we could start. Just like that, our life turned a page. A new chapter began, one written with faith, with love, and with the quiet certainty that God was leading us exactly where He needed us to go. We purchased a home at 126 Maple Street, a modest 1,600 square foot home with borrowed money that I got from odd jobs and Becky's parents, who were not well off themselves. It was a place where the oaks arched over the road and met in the middle like the nave of a cathedral. It was the kind of place where kindness was not the exception, but a quiet covenant, where someone brought a pie to a new resident, sometimes just because it was picturesque, almost timeless.